You are listening to Get Real podcast.
Dan.
Yes, Glenard.
I am looking at this wonderfully developed Facebook page here.
Wait, go back to the carbs.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I see blackberry pie on here. Oh man. And it is about dinner time over here where we're at right now. That looks really good.
Yep.
And then we got these, look at these muffins with chocolate drizzle on them.
Yeah,
Oh, that's good too.
Temptation.
That is. And look at that. I guess that's a cup of coffee, tea, or maybe some chamomile.
Some sleepy time.
We're going to have to find out about that. This looks like something maybe out of Betty Crocker or a Zondervan's commercial or something like that, okay?
Or maybe it's a metalhead.
It could be. And for our listeners, stay tuned and you're going to find out. But look at the profile here. It says that this person loves Jesus, music, being bubbly, fluffy animals. She probably loved Mac, the metal dog.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mac's cool.
Snuggling, encouraging, learning, and traveling. So this really sounds like a very sweet, mild-mannered Christian woman.
Completely.
And definitely sweet. Mild mannered, but quiet. No. Let's take a listen to something. Listeners got to hear this. This is who we're going to be talking to in just a few seconds here. Get a load of this.
All right.
Oh, I'm rocking already. Oh, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh man,
that's what I'm talking about.
I bet those muffins rock too.
On the line with her roar makes Katy Perry sound like a newborn kitten.
Don't even say
Oh, and we got thunder in the background right now too. This is awesome for effect. On the line with us, we have Shannon Graham and Jay, and they are part of a band called World Breaker. It's kind of interesting how I found them. I found a post that Shannon put on one of those heavy metal Facebook group Facebook pages. It's like, hey, check out our music. I didn't even check out the music. I was like, this is somebody I want to talk to. Didn't even listen to anything. And I reached out to her before listening to anything. We found out that we had a lot in common in professional pursuits and everything like that too. I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. And then when I dug into the music, I was like, oh, I am just so sold. I was like, this is it.
No lie. He just showed me, which one? What did you show me?
Star
Which one?
Breather.
Okay, Star Breather. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I'm stoked.
Shannon and Jay, welcome to the Get Real podcast.
Welcome.
Hi, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So you guys have a band called World Breaker. That is a very, I would say, thought-provoking name for a band. It's not like something like Ripe Diaper that I would come up with, or
oh, that's really bad, Glenn.
You know what the first cover song of that band would be, Dan?
No, don't tell me. I'm like,
Winds of Change. Okay.
Oh my goodness. I'm trapped in here with a cornball.
Can you explain to us World Breaker? What is the deeper meaning behind that, if there is one, guys?
Okay, so it's kind of a funny story a little bit, and we actually started out with like a ton of different names, and I had like this running list on my phone of like these names that we came up with, and between Jay, Dale, and I, we would like settle on like these really quirky names, and we would like laugh about them, but nothing ever really stuck with us, and Jay actually has this little studio that it's right now just kind of only used for like, family and friends and our own use right now, but he called it World Breaker. And it actually comes from the verse 1 John 2:15-17. It says, do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever. So basically the name just comes down to, breaking the hold of the world. We all have experienced the world just slapping us in the face. Life just kind of sucks for everyone at some point, there's no escaping that. And so World Breaker is just one of those things where it's like, you break what the world has on you and you break free. And the way that you do that is through God. And Jay might be able to give you a little more insight on why he chose that for his studio name.
Yeah. So I love video games. Okay, so the term came from League of Legends. They released a bundle of skins called World Breaker. I was like, man, that sounds really cool. So at first, the fact that it sounded cool, I was like, man, that'd be a cool studio name or something. And then it just kind of started turning the wheels. Like, that's kind of a good thing to try and break the world itself of the spiritual, just the spiritual aspect of everything you see in it. So, I mean, yeah, it was kind of a couple things that went into it, but I mean, ultimately it was a pretty cool name, and it had a lot of relevance to how we felt about things around us.
That's really cool. Hey, tell me why metal? What in the past, metal, there's so many things out there. You could be singing jazz. Why metal?
Well, one, I don't know if my voice would go with jazz very well. I've kind of always had like this raspy kind of voice, but honestly, so Jay and Dale, they used to be in My Heart to Fear together, which was definitely a metal band. I used to be in Light Up the Darkness. I wasn't the lead singer, but I did do screams, play the bass, and play the piano. And we were like heavy rock, alternative rock, whatever you want to call it. I had always kind of liked a little bit heavier styles than what my band used to be. Of course, I love all styles of music, and so do the boys. I mean, Dale literally walks around with a cowboy hat on and his phone blaring country music most of the time. So,
amen.
Yeah, we all kind of love all different types of styles of music, but we all kind of converged at the metal point. And so, I mean, you can hear it in our songs that there's just kind of all kinds of different styles that kind of converge there, but really the meeting point for all of us was metal. So, I mean, really, we didn't overthink when we started writing. We just kind of started writing, and I love screaming more than I do singing. So, I mean, it really wasn't a hard choice for us as far as the metal goes.
Yeah, and I've been writing music for close to 20 years now, and since I was 9-10 years old, I would listen to As I Lay Dying when they first started, when Avenged Sevenfold was still a nobody. So it was something that metal is just really good at capturing a lot of emotions. Plus, it's incredibly fun to write and play. So those are all great reasons to be a metal band. Yeah,
rock has always been kind of at the forefront of my music style, especially because, I grew up with my dad. I mean, he used to win talent shows in the Air Force and everything, around the world. Like, he was really into rock music. That was his thing. And so growing up, my bedroom was actually right next to the music room, and I would fall asleep to my dad, playing the acoustic guitar or practicing his rock. And that's kind of, I grew up with the classic rock being, the music of choice in our family. And so we, I would always grow up with rock, but then, we started, when I was 8 or 9, my parents became youth pastors, and we started going to all of these rock shows, and then we met this band named Disciple, which I'm sure you guys have heard of them.
Very familiar with them.
Yeah, I hope so. But through a couple of occurrences, we actually became really good friends with them when I was 9 years old, and I've seen them in concert 60 plus times, and that's no exaggeration. And so I guess when I was younger, my real taste of hard rock / metal was Disciple, and it just kind of bloomed from there. And rock has always been a thing for our family. And so growing up, it just kind of blossomed into metal,
I need to wrap my head around this. I absolutely love your vocal style, and I want to hear from you and have our listeners understand. Hearing a good female screamer is very rare. Okay, that's not very common, especially when it comes to Christian metal. It's really not very common at all. What is it that draws you to that? Why do you feel comfortable with that? And how do you believe God's using that? When a lot of people would hear that and be like, oh, it's devils. When no, just be quiet, sit down in the back, please. When it's actually something that's very godly.
That's a good question, Glenn.
I worked on that all week.
All right.
So, I never really chose to scream. It just happened. So I told you about Disciple. We used to take every chance to go see them in concert, and seeing them in concert, you know, that gave us a taste of a lot of other metal / hard rock bands. And actually, when I was 11, we have a ton of family in Arizona, and there just so happened to be a Disciple concert in Albuquerque, New Mexico, when we were on our way to Arizona one time. So we actually stopped off, and I had never screamed before this or even thought about it. In fact, my parents, they went and performed, you know, in coffee shops and whatnot, and I would play the tambourine or the shaker up front with them. But I never did any singing or, you know, any bass playing or piano playing or anything like that up in front of people. Like I still don't like a lot of attention. Like that is, I just don't like it that much. So my parents had to like pull teeth to get me to perform at all in front of people. And even then it was only doing the tambourine and shaker. But, so I never thought about doing any screaming or anything like that. Like that was not something that I chose to like start practicing or whatever. But we were at this show when I was 11, and there was a random local band, and it has been far too long for me to remember the name of the local band, but they had this really, really catchy song. And the words to that, to this line that really caught me were, for anyone who's entangled in the web of sin, all you have to do is knock, knock, and he'll let you in. And they're talking about Jesus. And this part was screamed. And for whatever reason, me and my two sisters, I have a twin and an older sister who's about a year and a half older than me, and we all were obsessed with that song. And so as we were all piling back into this 15-passenger van that we used to, you know, travel, we were, you know, pretending to act out this song. I mean, I was 11, you know, my older sister was 12, maybe 13. And so we were acting this out. And as my parents are starting to climb in the car, you know, I let out this scream doing that part, just trying to mimic the guy. My dad slowly turns back and looks in the back seat, and he goes, "Who just did that?" And then I was, you know, raised my hand thinking I'm in trouble or something, like, did I do something wrong? And my dad's like, "Do it again." And so I'm like, kind of looking at my sisters like, "Oh crap." And so I do it again. And my dad looks at my mom, and he just gets this look on his face, and they don't say anything. And then we just drive away. So from there on out, my dad has always pushed for me to be, you know, up in the limelight and whatnot. And I just have never been that way. Like, oh my gosh, stage fright. I hated it. Like, I would be asked to sing up in front of the church, and I would like want to sing backstage, you know, I would still want to sing for people, but sing backstage, you know? And, so my dad finally talked me into screaming, with the youth band. Actually, we would cover some Christian songs, and put a little bit harder edge on them. So he finally talked me into screaming. I think I was like 17. And so we just performed usually for the youth group. And so he talked me into screaming finally in front of everybody, and it became a thing. And like, I never like really practiced my screams or anything after that point. But when we started doing Light Up the Darkness, and I actually like became a staple as far as the screaming and whatnot goes. And but I had never practiced it or anything like that. It just happened one time when I was 11, and I didn't realize that it was any big deal until I got a little bit older and realized that it isn't a popular thing, you know. But what I think is really cool though is that I have people tell me all the time that because Dale and Jay had to really, really push me to actually be the lead person in the band, because I just don't like being the center of attention. And it's not that it's because like I can handle it. I just don't like it because I don't like people to look at me and what I can do. I want them to see Jesus. And sometimes I feel like it can be a fine line, especially when you are a front lead woman in especially a genre like this. I mean, you do get a lot of attention because it is rare. And so I always am constantly praying for God to guide my heart and to, you know, make sure to where he is the limelight and not me. And so I think that I've had a couple of friends tell me that that's why I belong in the lead, is because I like to try and be humble about that, because I don't believe it's me. I believe it's God, because again, I didn't even know that I could do it or that it was a cool thing, but God led me to that. And so I believe that the way that God uses that is giving me a more humble heart and helping me realize that, it's him, and then being able to tell others that, so that when people are like, oh my gosh, you're awesome, I like to respond, well, praise God, it's all him, it's not me, I just like him to shine through me.
That's beautiful.
That is wonderful. And your dad is cool. Okay. Dan and I, we come from a very, very, well, it's been a spiritual roller coaster most of our lives. If any of us had screamed, we once got in trouble for turning the volume up and Dan going into free song using Black Sabbath's Paranoid, and we were in the corner one afternoon. And if Dan had started screaming, they would have tried to cast a devil out of him instead of saying, you need to get up and do that.
You know what I love? Shannon and Jay, I was just exposed to your music today, and Glenn was playing.
Really?
What was the name of the
Star Breather?
Okay, we both work like crazy. It's not like we're professional podcasters that just sit around and get to do it. So I just heard, and it moved me in a worshipful way. And I mean that from the very bottom of my heart. I write some music. I'm amateur. I do some different things. And when I hear you talking about that reluctance to be in the limelight, the reluctance to be the center of attention. And it's such a beautiful display, because let me tell you, it's either something about people that like to express themselves through metal or like to receive from metal that allows for cerebral theological expression. And there's something about a reluctance that can filter and give real authenticity. And it's a beautiful thing, because there's nothing worse than hearing someone's histrionic little, oh, I'm the center of the universe. Aren't I special? Look at me. I'm the pretty center of attention. That I'm going to turn that off in 5 seconds. But when you have planets colliding and you're talking and using obscure French terms all fun to describe,
we had to look that up.
I had to look that one up. I was like, this is so literary. It's so stimulating. It's so beautiful. It's such logos. It's talking about God uttering the worlds into existence. Oh my goodness, I want to worship Jesus Christ, the Lord of all. And it moved me into a worshipful state. And I'm like, this is beautiful. This is absolutely creative and beautiful. And I loved it. And I'm like y'all, and y'all refreshed me in the sense of saying like, oh yeah, country and this. I could go from bluegrass to funk to jazz to metal to Rush, and then I'm ending it with like Patsy Cline or Ella Fitzgerald. And my kids follow me and they're like, yeah, Dad, that rocks. And then it's like, and then Devin Townsend to top off the Sunday, right?
But you forgot Silly Songs with Larry.
Oh yeah, little Veggie Tales, throw that in there. But it's so refreshing to hear authentic art that's created directly to the logos of God, like speaking through you. You don't want to be the center of attention. You want to be, what do you say, subservient to Christ. You want to express something, but there's an epidemic of lack of creativity. There's an epidemic of wimpy people that get out and they express something that they're copying somebody. Or, oh, I'm a praise band. I'm going to try to sound like Coldplay. I'm going to be the 900th praise band that tries to emulate Coldplay, and or something like that. And it's like, no, do what God has stirred in you. You're completely genetically unique. God made the platypus, for crying out loud. He made trilobites. He made all sorts of weird things. It's like we can be unique and we can celebrate the things of God. So your music definitely 100% speaks to people. At least to these two guys right here. It did to me.
Shannon, I want to talk about Star Breather for a minute, because we're going to play that for our listeners, because we want them. This is one thing that I like about the Get Real podcast listeners, is that they are very loyal and voracious. Okay. So I want to get you exposed to our listeners. But first of all, looking at that video, what was it like traveling in space to get that video footage of the stars colliding and everything like that?
It's pretty crazy, because the first half of that song was actually written like 5 years ago. Okay. And it was just because I have riffs and stuff that I keep archived from over the past several years, and it just never had an ending. And then, we're getting ready to release an EP, and I had so much stuff to put out there, and we just started writing this, using, MIDI and stuff like that to kind of get a direction going. And it took like 2 days to finish it, this song that's like 5 or 6 years old. And I was like, hey, I think this is ready for lyrics. And then, you know, she gets in the, you know, we makeshift our bathroom. I've got blankets hanging up everywhere. And she...
I do have to say though, like I was miffed at him at first because I walk in and I'm hearing him like finish this song. And I think it sounds cool and everything like that, but him and Dale had talked about doing this instrumental. I'm like, this is going to be the instrumental, right? Because the way that the song was set up, I'm like, how the heck do you want me to write lyrics to this? There's no like chorus, verse, you know, chorus or whatever. There's like no set structure. What are you doing to me? I was like miffed at him at first. I was like, you seriously are making this very hard on me.
Yeah. So she gets in the booth and she gets the headphones on, and we just all were really, really feeling the Spirit move. Like, and I know you fellas know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, it's not you singing, you know, it's not you playing those instruments. And, you know, we got to the point to where she just shut the lights off in the bathroom and recorded the whole rest of the song in the darkness.
Did you know the lyrics at that point, or was that like, boom, she was just singing something new for you?
So it was actually, okay, so I have to mention at this point, so I know that you mentioned before we came on about your deal with In Temptation, and so I won't dive into that too deeply right now, but it was actually funny because before I wrote the lyrics, when I first heard the song come on, and I'll have to tell you a story about Within Temptation back when I was 18 as well. But,
I want to get into that.
Yeah. So when I heard him like finishing up the thing, when I first thought that it was an instrumental, I actually went in there, and when he told me that it wasn't an instrumental, I was like, oh man, this is a little stressful. But I immediately get on YouTube and have him listen to Within Temptation, and I think that the song, and now you can correct me if I'm wrong, I am terrible with song names, but Espiritus, I do believe is the name of the song. Yes, super old one. But
our darkest hour. Our darkest hour.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. So back in the day, that used to be like, that was the song that actually got me into the band Within Temptation. And I immediately, when I heard him playing that, and he said, well, we want lyrics to it. I'm like, oh, shoot. Well, that's going to be difficult, but I definitely hear this style here. And so I played this song for him and Dale, or that song on YouTube. And I was like, you guys, I really hear this. And I hadn't written the lyrics by that point, but the following night I actually sat down next to Jay, and within a few minutes I'd written out lyrics, but I had no idea how I was going to sing them. I was on a melody lock. I looked at Jay and I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to sing this song. Like, it is progressive, so it's like it's not following the same basic outline as like most songs follow. So I have no idea what to do with this. So instead of like trying to sit there and figure it all out, I just looked at Jay and he goes, let's just jump in the vocal booth. I was like, all right, let's do this. So we get in there and we just stumbled through a few different things. And like, I'm not going to lie, like we took very few takes, and I told Jay, I said, I'm just going to turn off the lights in here because I was getting goosebumps just from listening to it. And I was like, you know, God's doing something, so I'm just going to sing. And he's like, all right, I'm recording. So, and that's what we did. And it was a couple of times we had to stop because like I was just getting real emotional and couldn't, you know, when you record, you have to have a good take. And I was like, we're going to have to pause. I'm getting emotional in here. But we just kind of let the Spirit move and do whatever came out of us. And we've actually had a couple of people, you know, say this is a really odd song, you know, but it wasn't us, it was God, and we just kind of left it for him to do what he wanted to with it.
Well, it really comes through. And you know what, old Generation Z guy, or generation, what are we? X guys.
We're old.
You know what we would call that? A fax. You got a fax from the Lord. He moved on you and he did something he's like, boom, I want this said. And let me tell you, I'm very sensitive to things like that. And as soon as I started listening, the whole rudiment of the outer space, the colliding planets, the order of the universe, the chaos, the things, and I'm just in my soul, I'm like, yes. And that is such a starting point for ministry. People that are being moved upon by the Lord, they have to deal with creation. They have to deal with purpose. They have to deal with design. They can go neo-Darwinistic. It's an emotional tantrum to just use a little bit of octopus ink so you can go and dwell in your lusts and not have to deal with the conviction of sin. And so if everybody's telling me that, hey, I jumped out of a primordial soup, it's not a baby, it's just a tissue, it's a parasite, you can kill, you can do whatever you want to do, it's all good. It's all this postmodernistic squish of gruel, right? You can just make whatever smoothie you want to make about truth. But when it comes to how did we get here? How did the solar system get here? How did the sun stay the right distance away? How did the earth and the moon and this huge like gauntlet that is running while we sleep, right? That's just ripe enough. Ray Comfort said it's just ripe enough. It's just good enough to ripen my tomatoes perfectly, not burn me up into a crisp. Just ripe enough, just close enough to ripen my fruit trees.
See, I'm really white, so I get burnt to a crisp as a son. We might need to talk to Jesus about adjusting a little bit.
That's good.
The other night, and I want to talk about this because it really hits home to me, and you had brought it up just a few seconds ago. The other night when I was listening to Star Breather, I was doing a review of it for this podcast while I was writing basically the outline. And when we get to the clean vocal part, I had to stop and go back. I was like, wait a minute. I hear the hint of Within Temptation in there, which is very difficult to pull off. That is not something that can be, somebody just can't wake up and say, oh, yeah, I'm going to emulate that vocal style of Sharon. And I sent you a message. I was like, I want to make sure I'm hearing this right, but I hear a hint of that in there. And that's really special to me because that was the first thing that really, when I was recovering from a brain tumor, from brain surgery, and going through a divorce at the same time, it was that voice and that sound that really kind of calmed me down, and God used as a healing for me. And to find somebody else that's like, oh yeah, because here in the United States, people are like, yeah, what's that? You don't find many people that know who Within Temptation is. And you were like, yeah, they were my favorite band when I was like 18. What was it that drew you to Within Temptation? How did you find them and that influence that's in there? Because there is something very special about them that I can't quite put my finger on. And I really believe that God has, I don't know where they're at, but I've been praying for them. And I know that God's used them in my life. What is it about them that in your life, Shannon?
So it's been many years ago, but so my dad actually found them on YouTube, and he was like, girls, you got to check out this band. I've always had an obsession with Ireland and Celtic things. Mm-hmm.
Same here.
Yeah. And so, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the band Helvetii.
Yes, we actually did 2 podcasts about them.
Are you serious? Okay. So this is really cool because most people have no clue who Helvetii or Within Temptation, like nobody has any idea who these bands are. And so back in the day, Within Temptation, my dad found him on YouTube. He's like, girl, you got to check this band out. They are so cool. This lady has some pipes on her. I'm like, all right. So we listened, and my twin sister and I, back in the day, we actually bought a car together. And since we were twins, I mean, we did everything together. I mean, we had like the same job. We were, worked at the same place. We, because we were the same age. So we did everything the same anyway. So we were always in the car together. And so my twin and I ended up really liking them. And so Darkest Hour, that was the song that caught us first.
Yes.
And we actually, and our car was this huge boat of a car. And it's actually really funny because I'm extremely short, and I couldn't drive the car because I was so short that even a pillow wouldn't allow me to see over the steering wheel. So my twin actually ended up driving everywhere. And our big thing was, and of course, it's been quite a few years since I was 17, but back then we used to turn our CDs into tapes so we could listen to them in the car. And that might be a lost thing on a lot of people these days, but we had a tape of we got the CD for Within Temptation. We ordered it online, and we turned it into a tape so that we could play it in our giant car together. And everywhere we went, we had 3 bands that we listened to. I mean, because we were limited, because you had to be able to make the tape to listen to it in the car. So we only had so many tapes at the time, and we were still a little bit newer to listening to like the metal because we were in a transition from hard rock to metal. And,
Right.
The 3 CDs that we listened to were actually 4. It would be Demon Hunter, and it was Norma Jean, and let me see, and then Within Temptation, and I'm trying to remember who the 4th one was. Oh, Emery.
Okay.
And we listened to those 4 over and over and over again, but we got obsessed with Within Temptation mainly because she was really fun to sing with.
Mm-hmm. I can't do it, but yeah.
Come on, Glenn,
well,
try.
You can sing like her. It would just sound odd. But no, yeah. So we loved singing with her at the top of our lungs in the car. And my sister and I at the time actually were lifeguards. And my parents, it was literally on our 18th birthday, our parents surprised my sister and I and picked us up from our work. Within Temptation was playing 10 shows in the United States.
Oh.
Yeah, it was huge. The closest one they were playing to us was in Colorado.
Okay.
So my twin sister and I, through sharing our love for Within Temptation to belt these, songs at the top of our lungs, we were absolutely stoked to go get to see them for our 18th birthday in Colorado. And so we actually get there thinking it's supposed to be some ballroom thing or whatever. We get there and it's some hole-in-the-wall bar that they're playing at. And, oh, my gosh, my parents, the look on their faces, it was so funny. My mom was like, oh, dear. So we get in there and we're getting beer spilled all over us and everything, but we are just so stoked to get to see these guys live, And, come to find out, we actually stopped listening to them after this, but they were actually yelling like the F word from the stage and everything when they got up there to play. And my mom, it was absolutely hilarious. We had already bought merch shirts and all this. Uh-huh. And when they get up on stage, their guitarist for Within Temptation actually yells the F word. And my mom looks at my dad and she marches right up and returns all the merch that we bought. But, and to be slightly fair, over there, it's a little bit different.
It's different in the Netherlands. Yep.
Right. Yeah. So, but
and with
we
the
actually
Irish.
stopped listening to them. We slightly stopped listening to them after that, just simply because we were a little strict on that, and they were pretty rough in concert as far as like. I don't know if I know that when we talked to the lead singers, they actually were a little bit more paganism was a little bit more their style rather than Christianity.
Yep.
And at the time, my parents didn't want us to, be listening to that actively and whatnot. They were a little bit stricter and whatnot. So we kind of stopped listening to them after that. But you could definitely feel a spirit with her style, with their music in general. It's very unique, and I'm really into that, like European/Swedish metal. Like that is probably my favorite style of metal. It's just so unique and very melodic sounding. I love that sound. But with her voice, I think the thing that really drew me to them the most was the fact that you are used to hearing guys' voices or a more manly sounding voice, even if it's coming from a woman when it comes to metal. And that's what I hear a lot, actually, when I run into other female screamers in metal. They usually have these very, very low growls, and I can get lower, but they have that like real guttural growl, which is great. I love it, but it's not common for you to hear that. Like when you hear metal, you think you're getting ready to hear like this manly, raspier voice,
Right.
And so when I heard her voice, and it was just this beautiful, almost like opera style voice at moments, it's beautiful, and it just caught me off guard, and it went so well with like the metal sound that I was like, gosh, I love that. And when he started playing Starbreather for me, and I was told I was going to be having to write lyrics to it, I was just like, this is what I want. I want that beautiful melodic metal sound, but I want that very, high pitched, soft, tight voice in there with it, like she did. I'm like, I think it would be the perfect combination.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm sure, Jay, you would agree with your recording experience, having a female vocal right upon the mix, even sonically, as far as the frequencies and being able to dial everything in. It's easier to get that sound than it would be a guy mid bass right in the middle competing with all the electric guitars and bass and everything. It gets lost in the mix.
Yeah, man, mixing her is a dream. It's,
I can imagine.
A slight EQ, hardly any compression, and it's boom, right in your face.
Yeah, well, it gave me goosebumps, so y'all connected.
Yeah.
It's good.
We're gonna take
Praise God.
we're gonna take a quick break and listen to Star Breather. We're gonna expose our listeners to this. They're going to absolutely love it. We'll be right back, and we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk more about. I want to talk more about God and Jesus in just a few minutes after we listen to this song. Yes, and justice. So this is Star Breather by World Breaker. Shannon, in addition to being a gifted artist, you also have a background in something that's dear to my heart, criminology and sociology. You also have a degree in English, correct?
Correct. Yes, my bachelor's is in English, and I actually have an associate's in teaching and English. And then my master's, which I still have 2 classes left to go on that, is criminal justice sociology and psychology.
So you've probably got us all figured out by now that Dan and Glenn are two.
no.
Actually, I'm pretty sure the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. And I'm like, dang, you think the more you study, the more you're going to have it figured out. But you realize, oh my goodness, there is so much still to learn.
You know what I'm going to bring up?
Go for it, Dan.
The mystic, the 15th century mystic Nicholas of Cusa, with his learned ignorance.
Yes.
And understanding that in the approach to the infinite, that one can do the most by recognizing the impossibility of being able to comprehend who is infinite. Therefore, you back off, acknowledge humbly in a childlike manner that you're incapable of comprehending him, and then you approach him in divine bliss and be able to receive his revelation. Boom!
Boom.
You inspired me. You inspired me. I read too much, but no, that's exciting. That's like, metalheads are always like, it can be such a place where you can release. How do you take a pop song and release, I don't know, the vicarious substitutionary atonement, the hypostatic union, the speaking worlds into existence?
You can't.
It's all about just your latest breakup and somebody shaking their hips or some sensuality. It's just really, really, really basic, right? And if you go beyond that, they're like, ew, what is that?
I don't understand that. So I don't get it, Stacy.
You were going to talk about justice, right?
Justice, yes. Let's talk about justice. So we have.
So am I hearing though, real quick, pause. Am I hearing, do you guys not like pop music?
We do.
I like everything, but
Yeah.
I don't like anything that's like, if it's too basic, it just drives me nuts. If it's just enjoyable, I could listen to reggae and be like, that's pretty cool. But if it's just like my next boyfriend, my next breakup, I'm like, someone, just hit
it's
me.
crazy because that's the stuff. It's literally about as shallow and in the moment as things can get. So
Yes.
I think
Yes.
so many people can be caught up in those quick, week-long emotions, and that's why so many people can relate to it. But it's also why 90% of what you hear on the radio is not timeless.
It's popular because it's easy for people to quickly relate to. It doesn't go very deep. It's a very shallow type of emotion. So people can just like quickly connect to it, get in and get out. And it's, it's almost like a drug. You know what I mean?
No, it is. Yeah.
It's an easy fix.
It's the surface of the problem and not the root.
Exactly. And a marketing algorithm. It's
Yes.
safe play for the suits.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we're going to do this
you wanna make
album.
a quick buck
Yeah,
and
give us a
sing
good
about your
breakup song for some preteens. No, I just, and people have different, everybody is different. Everybody has different giftings. And I'm like, I hear that and I'm like, it's like small talk. I can enjoy saying, hey, how you doing? But when it gets like, well, the weather or the Bears or the, it starts getting sports or whatever, I'm like, dude, I'm out.
Yeah.
I just can't handle it.
Now there are some Christian pop artists. Nettie comes to mind, who are very gifted, and they deal with they use that medium to deal with the root of the problem and glorify Christ.
Well, it's not the genre.
Right, it's not the genre.
Not the genre.
No, it's where the heart's coming from in it.
Yeah.
Anything that's really deep, that moves me. Any genre that really deals with the issue and not just like, let's go out and get sexed up tonight.
I have to ask you guys. Okay, so you're talking about some like pop Christian artists. So I have a couple of people that I actually practiced my scream to back in the day, and that was Disciple, Red, Flyleaf. I practiced my scream to them to hone it. More Disciple and Red than anybody.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, but not just practicing my scream. Now I actually practice because I've been practicing on my lows, which I'm sure for a woman is a little bit harder to do. And I actually practice to a guy named Thomas Portwood, Life by Death. I love his lows. They're amazing, and I am always practicing in my car. I do not like practicing my screams in front of people because I feel absolutely ridiculous. But no, I also practiced my singing, and back in the day, I practiced my my singing more than I did my screaming, because I was actually embarrassed of my screaming. But I don't know if you guys remember Stacey Orico or Rachel Lampa.
I remember Stacey Orico.
Yeah, that's usually the one everybody remembers.
Yes.
But they are some pretty old school pop Christian artists, and those were the two that I actually used to practice my singing vocals to way back in the day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's
That
funny.
is going back.
Shannon, I keep picturing,
Yeah.
I picture you with like some very like floral print apron with a tray full of muffins, and then you're like practicing this scream. You're like, whoa, you know.
Do you want some
You
muffins?
guys are cracking me up. Okay, so you guys actually said that my profile reminded you of Betty Crocker, and my nickname used to be Betty Crocker when I was
Oh,
little.
man, we are flowing in the spirit up here
Yep,
today.
We got
Yep.
a little bit of word of knowledge.
There
happening.
we go. Word of knowledge happening right here in the old fishbowl.
That is fun. That's fun.
So back in the day, I was telling you, I actually am not, you can ask my husband, I actually mouth a lot. So I do like pop because I dance, and I've danced since I was little. But I'm with you guys on that pop front. These shallow lyrics are what really just, it kills it
It's
for me.
nauseating.
Yes, and that's the exact word that I actually use with Jay all the time. I'm like, so monotonous, so redundant, so boring. And I think that every style can get into that, but pop is so bad for it. I'll sit there and listen to those lyrics, and as you guys know, lyrics are a huge thing for me. I'll sit there and I'll listen to a pop song, and I'm like, gosh, I love this beat. And that's what gets stuck in my head. You listen to the lyrics, and I'm like, there's no substance here. You repeat the same two words over and over again. Like,
Yeah.
what did you even mean by that? 'Cause
Totally.
half the time it doesn't even fit together.
Totally. Well, I have to admit, when I'm cooking muffins, I try to hit the high part in chandelier. I really do. I feel it. I bring it.
Now, 80s pop is a little bit different. I could 80s pop all day long. That very different from what we have today.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the
Right.
80s were,
Yeah.
were weird.
That was
I mean,
that
they
was
were
different.
Different deal.
Yeah, everything
Justice.
was kind of
Talk about justice.
Justice, yes.
You got me all
justice.
psyched up to
All
talk about
psyched
justice.
up. So, Shannon, let's
Yes.
talk about justice here a little bit. Criminal justice system. We have one here in the United States. There's criminal
Oh, don't
justice.
get me started on that.
There's one throughout the world, throughout most of the world. There's a criminal justice system. From
Right.
your studies of criminal justice, how do you believe God uses that in His bigger plan for the salvation of men? That's a big question, I know.
What?
But
Criminal. Wait,
yeah,
clarify that.
the criminal justice system, laws, penalties, judges, judgments, things like that.
Concept or the enforcement or both?
Both.
Okay.
Both.
Okay, so, okay, I'm going to bring this all down and start from the beginning. Okay, so, I mean, so starting with the criminal justice system. So in a few of my classes, we had to really dive in deep as far as comparing the criminal justice systems around the world. And really what it comes down to, the focus of a justice system is supposed to be all around rehabilitation. And sadly, I mean, a couple of the countries have really honed in on that and done a great job at rehabilitating, their offenders. Now, and I've written long papers on this. The United States, one of the biggest downfalls of the United States and their criminal justice system is when it comes to the rehabilitating part. And I believe, as far as criminal justice goes with God, so like a righteous justice, and then our criminal justice system, I think when it comes down to it, both are focused on rehabilitation and should be the focus. Now, what I believe happens with the criminal justice system in this day and age is that the rehabilitating aspect is completely lost. So we have all of these people who are offending and who are getting into trouble, and they go into the justice system, and whether they're slapped with a fine or probation or they get jail/prison time, they go in, and usually through all of this, it ends up being worse for them. And so can you restate your question? We want to make sure that I'm answering it specifically
how
for you
God,
guys.
how you believe God uses a system, a criminal justice system. How does it fit into God's bigger plan for the redemption of mankind?
Okay, so yeah, and so like as I was saying, okay, so rehabilitation is what all comes down to, and I think that all of us have a struggle in life, and I mean, like I believe that for the most part, all of us end up really, truly realizing God when we get to our lowest. And I believe that we see God and we know Him, and we can realize Him in other ways. But I think the most intimate way that most of us end up finding and realizing that we need God is when we get to our lowest moments. And for a lot of people, that can be getting into trouble with the law. You know, they might be, you know, pushing the lines or whatever, and they might get into these bad habits in life, and they don't realize how bad their life has gotten or how bad they need God until they get to their lowest moment and they're sitting in jail and they have nothing left in life except God. And so I believe that our justice system can be used in multiple ways, or that God does use it in multiple ways. Well, for one, it says in the Bible, you know, to follow the law of the land, and having some sort of structure in life is, I mean, in general, going to help you be a better person. I mean, just all the way around, whether you're a Christian or not, having some sort of structure and moral is going to make you a better person. But I believe that in my experience, because I do a lot of ministry with people who are in these rough places, you know, with this youth outreach and whatnot, I've dealt with a lot of people or a lot of kids who are at that low point that are just kind of searching in life and they're lost. And they don't realize who God is in their life or who He needs to be to them until they are sitting in jail, or they're, you know, they have probation and they can't even leave the city because they, you know, have gotten into trouble. And I believe that that's how God uses it more than anything, honestly. We get to that low point, and some of us don't need to, you know, end up in jail or be slapped with, you know, getting in trouble with the law to eventually get there, but a lot of people do. And at least in my line of ministry, I've witnessed that it doesn't really click with people until they do. You know, it's like a slap in the face, and I think that God uses that as a way to be like, hey, knock, 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 I'm here and you need me, and here's why. You know, and I think that's what the criminal justice, I think that's what God uses the criminal justice system more than anything for, is to, as a wake-up call, really.
Shannon, when you mention the word rehabilitation, my mind darts instantly to something that I watched, a couple of documentaries. Have you ever heard of Angola Prison in Louisiana? Or Louisiana, I'm from Louisiana, so I can say it that way.
I have not.
Okay.
I have not.
I would encourage you and our listeners, and it would probably inspire you to write music. It'll probably inspire you to tears. It has broken all metrics for rehabilitation. And as far as there's psychological, there's, you know, all sorts of things where they study, why does this inmate do this? Why do they go back to crime? Why do they do this? How can we rehabilitate better? Is it counseling? Is it the way we treat them? Is it too much solitary confinement? Is it too much this or that? Well, in Louisiana, they had some people that were bold enough to go, you know what, we're going to let the local ministries get at them, which a lot of places do, praise God. And they started having lifers. They're not going anyplace. Rapists, murderers, get born again. And these men begin worshiping God, great big old men, hands outstretched, weeping, hugging people, hugging other men of other races, loving them with the love of Christ. And it started catching on, and it started lowering the costs that, you know, the government's sitting there looking at different things, and they're like, they don't care about the things of the Lord generally. They're looking at cost efficiency, rates of violence, you know, what are we spending, what's going on? And in every conceivable way, the only way that people could really be rehabilitated was by becoming born again in the Word of God. So the state was like, Louisiana, there's a lot of gospel believing folks. So they started going, hey, we'll pay for it with our local churches. We'll do this. Let's set them up this, set them up this. Eventually, they got to the point where they're sending lifers and taking them to other prisons to minister the glorious gospel to other people. It'll blow your mind. You got to watch it. You'll have goosebumps, tears, and you'll probably be inspired to write a whole new album. I mean, it's fantastic stuff.
That's absolutely amazing. You know, that actually reminds me, what inspired me actually a little bit was I actually have done quite a bit of research on serial killers, and I know that everybody has heard of Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yes.
Yeah. And a lot of people, and Ted Bundy as well. I'm so many of them, but actually there is quite a few of these very famous serial killers that actually were reformed and became true, strong Christian believers and repented while they were, waiting to basically die in prison. And it just goes to show you really the power of God and what can be offered to people when they're taken out of society and, put in prison. And so you guys are talking about rehabilitation at this Angola. That is amazing. And I definitely believe that is what the churches should be doing. It sounds like the church is actually doing what it was meant to do there.
It'll blow your mind. It'll blow your mind.
Oh yeah, and I believe that both the criminal justice system and the churches should be working together because, like you said, it even says in the Bible that you can cast demons out of people, but unless you replace that, once you release that demon and there's that empty space there, unless you replace it with something, Jesus, that demon's just going to come back and bring 7 more, and it's going to be worse for that person.
Absolutely,
it has to be replaced with something, and the only thing you can replace that with is God. And there's nothing else that's going to be successful, and that's what's going to change people's lives. You can rehabilitate them all you want. You can give them a support system when they get out of jail to help them get a job and yada, yada, yada. But in the end, they're still going to have that giant hole in their chest that needs to be filled with something of substance. Giving somebody a job so that they can get money in a house is not going to fill that void in their life that they've been trying to fill with crime and everything else. They have to have something that lifts them up and builds them spiritually, and that's the only answer is God.
Yes. Well, Glenn and I have talked often, and it's a pattern that maybe you see as well, but it seems like God moves in an extraordinary way. Obviously, we're in the United States. We have so much freedom. We probably don't appreciate it, in general. We have somewhat, I'm not trying to be like negative or like beat the church up, but there's a lot of lethargy. Okay. People are not really that appreciative of the freedoms that we have. But where there's, if you're a lifer, you're behind bars, you don't have a hope of dating a new woman or getting married or building a business or going to the park tomorrow. You have your cell. And these men that turn and find the word of God and find salvation, and God becomes preeminent in their life. I see this. I have some connections with some people in different countries that are very persecuted, and I know some inside information, and I hear what goes on, and it's like, wow, in ways that the American church would have trouble conceiving. God moves in prisons and moves in countries that are greatly persecuted. And it's an amazing dynamic. But no, that's very interesting. Rehabilitation through Christ.
When I hear the word rehabilitation, I hear another word that's might be similar, but sounds like it, reconciliation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's what the whole purpose of the cross and the gospel is to reconcile us who are rebellious against God's nature. Okay, we're not just rebelling against God's laws when we commit adultery, when we lie, when we kill, when we look upon a woman to lust after her, even going down deep into the depths of the heart. We are actually violating the very holiness, God's nature. We're going against his grain, and the whole reason why he sent Christ. And I think the reason why there was a prisoner on the cross that got saved was to show that we are the prisoners, we are the criminals, very clearly.
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely agree. A lot of people equate justice with vengeance, or paying somebody back for the things that they did. And I don't think that that's what justice is about at all. I mean, because if you read in the Bible, most of the time, justice is actually equated with people, bringing justice to widows, bringing justice to orphans, and it's like, well, what do why is it always talking about that? And it's because justice is about making things right, and that doesn't mean that it's vengeance. It means, well, like you said, reconciliation. It's like with widows and orphans, they've been dealt a pretty rough lot in life, and as Christians, we're supposed to bring justice to them by helping them through that hard lot in life. It has nothing to do with vengeance. And I think that justice is such a twisted word these days, because people will be like, talking about, somebody who, like most recently, the shooter, and I think that when you have Christ, you don't look at justice as, I want to get revenge on them. They need to be paid back for what, they did, more so as I want to bring love, light, and hope to these people, and I think that's the difference that you guys are talking about. And so when these prisoners and whatnot come in to jail, and whatnot, that it's not necessary for them to, justice isn't getting them vengeance. Justice is giving them a different life, turning them completely around, and I think that that's the biggest thing for me, is looking at justice in the correct way and not in the, the morphed way.
Amen.
And you make a very good point, Shannon. Dan and I, the Get Real Studio, we're here in the Charleston, South Carolina area, and you probably remember several years ago we had the horrible church shooting at the Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston.
Yeah.
And that had the potential for a lot of people wanting to see vengeance executed very quickly, both with it from the church and the community. And everything that happened here was counterintuitive to that desire for vengeance. There was a seeking for justice, and what that church did, what they did was just, I believe, a model to the world and what to do in these situations. Is they prayed for that young man who did that.
Oh yeah.
And what came together here in Charleston when that happened, we didn't see division, but we saw this uniting of a desire for true justice and prayer for that young man who did that. So we've had a taste of that here.
It gave way to a real healing.
It did.
And one of the things that comes to mind, Shannon, is, and Jay, sorry to leave you out, man. If you got something, let me know.
You guys are good.
When I think about justice, and then there's the current dangers of the insertion, and it's basically, let's call it what it is, it's communism. Mm-hmm. People will try to take the insertion of social justice, which would mean we're going to mandate that the state take control and then mandate out and make everything equal for everybody. And Jesus, in his perfect wisdom, when he said such things as the poor will be with you always, that is bittersweet, okay? But Christ said that was God breathed. And it's not so much that, hey, we support poverty. We have a command to address benevolently widows and orphans and the poor, and to be generous on that personal ministerial basis. But then the Lord puts that barrier so that we don't go all utopian. Because let me tell you, think about it. If anyone studies history, one of the things that is going to be glaring to the honest soul is that utopianism turns into bloodshed and poverty quickly, over and over and over again. It's a continuous rudiment. So when people want to circumvent and do a Pravda-style forcing on American churches to try to make them feel guilty that we need social justice and you need to be an avenue of that. Nope. Our obedience is to Christ. Our obedience is to love our fellow man, but not to insert this oppressive state government that would be the one in control. I feel like even rehabilitation is better done by the churches than it is by the sterile state.
Yes.
People need Christ. They need a loving hand. But also, people need to be able to discern, is this a bum that just doesn't want to work, right? That's a tough saying to say. Let me discern before I give this guy soup. Is this guy just taken because he's lazy, doesn't want to take care of? Does he need the gospel? Does he need reproof? Does he need a man to come along and encourage him? Comfort him? It's a heavy deal, but that thing is so popular right now of trying to insert that little Pravda, communist nonsense. It's all been tried before to try to make the church feel guilty that we need to join some ecumenical government-sponsored socialism. It's like, nope, that brings poverty and genocide on a manifold level. And nothing is, I don't know of pretty much anything that's caused more bloodshed than communism, frankly.
Right.
But that's my 2 cents.
Yep. Shannon,
yeah.
for our listeners, what do you think the biggest misconception is about God's justice that we, because we're fallen, we can't fully comprehend God. You mentioned just a few seconds ago, and I think this would tie in with Jeffrey Dahmer. He, I believe he cried out to be born again, and there's going to be a lot of surprises in heaven. A lot of people have a hard time wrapping their head around that.
That started our radio show,
Yeah,
by
that
the way.
did. Yeah, back 18 years ago now. Yeah, 18. Wow, 18 years ago. What do you think is the? We're old. What do you think is the biggest? But we rock. What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about God's justice, Shannon?
Well, it's like I mentioned before, and I think that God's justice, people view it as a vengeance, and it's not. It's not God lashing out with a bolt of lightning to punish people. It's God wanting to bring people in and save them and give them glory and grace. And a lot of people, when it's always the joke that, somebody says something, off color or blasphemous, and people are like, oh, I'm going to stay away from you. You're going to get, hit with a bolt of lightning. That's not, God isn't this vengeful, angry God. He wants to show you love and hope and grace. He wants to save you from yourself. He wants to save you from the world and all of its darkness. And the way that he can do that is through justice, And so what a lot of people don't realize is that because it even says in the Bible that vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. And that's because when it comes down to vengeance, all of us as humans think of it as a nasty thing, but really justice, God's justice, is making everything right in the world, is making everything right. And that's just what it comes down to. And so I think the biggest misconception is that God's justice is this angry, nasty thing when it's not. It's actually beautiful and peaceful and hopeful.
Amen.
Yeah.
Glenn, you and I were talking about that last week.
Yeah, we were.
We were talking about light. And how a lot of people, they'll sit there, and how often have you heard this in ministry? I'm sure that you hear someone, I can't believe in a God that would send someone to hell. And you and I were talking about, well, God actually made the lake of fire, technically, for
Not
the
for
devil.
us.
It was not made for humans originally. It was made for the devil and his angels. And you and I were talking about light and how, in a sense, light and judgment go hand in hand. And darkness and mercy, not darkness in the sense of evil, but opacity or some sort of separation or estrangement from the direct presence of God. And it's almost as if you can imagine that in a sinful state, we can't enter into the manifold presence of God's light. He's a consuming fire. That would not work out well. I think about that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Where they open up the Ark of the
It's
Covenant.
all like eyeballs everywhere, right? And it wouldn't be groovy, right? No. And then we think about, it's like, because when God spoke the world into existence, the way the video captured so wonderfully, and spoke all these things, there was an order, there was a gist, there was an architecture, there was a plan. And unlike me, I try to order a pizza and they give it to me wrong, right? When God speaks something into existence, it maintains that perfect integrity. It doesn't return into him void. It's exactly as he spelled it out. And now fallen Adam does not meet that criteria. So in a sense, judgment is the Logos word meeting up with whatever estate we find ourselves in at the end. Okay. Yes. And so it's not this vindictive, this angry, you bad boy, you bad girl, I'm going to get you for what you're doing. It's that you do not meet the original criteria, and the word is coming in to judge, the living word. And when we find ourselves in that manifold light, we have to deal with the fact, and where I'm so thankful that we all are, is that we are covered in his blood. Not by our own effort, not by good works. We can sit there and go, I'm so stoked on the fact that he was my penal substitution. There was an element of criminality in what we, the way
Right.
we are. We were wayward. And even though Adam and Eve pulled it off, it's like we get to inherit that bad boy.
Yeah,
Thanks,
guys.
But in all seriousness, we sit there and we get to enjoy the benefits of that. So if you're listening and you hear and you're like, what are these people talking about? Why are they so goofy about Jesus? It's that he's the only hope to be made right. It's not a religious system where we turn into prudes and we talk a certain way and we do these things and God's going to, well, he's pretty good, you make it, and you're not quite as good, you're not going to make it. No, you have to be perfect. And you can only be made perfect through his blood, not by my conduct. And I know hanging out with you ain't perfect, son. So that is a great point, Shannon. And I'm sorry to get preachy on that, but I get really excited when I think about that. God's not this angry old man in the sky.
And it's actually a really big thing for me. This past year, the word empathy has been has been a very deep thing that I've been learning and been begging God to show me, because empathy is such a deep, all-encompassing lesson to learn. And I believe that God is he's got so much empathy that he's not sitting up there being like, I'm going to strike you with lightning. He's sitting up there, and you have to realize that when you make a mistake, he's not sitting up there angry at you, like it's so angry he wants to punch you or something. He's sitting up there with his heart broken, weeping for you. That's the difference in the way that people view, God. And, you were saying, his justice and whatnot. His justice isn't angry justice. It's he's weeping to save you. Like he feels your pain. He knows, and he wants to save you. And and I think that God, you guys were talking about the shooter that you guys had there and how the church handled it. I believe as you mature as a Christian that you learn empathy on a much deeper level to understand that about God, is that when somebody does something to you, it's not being a doormat to turn the other cheek. And this is where I've learned what turning the other cheek meant, because, when you're a kid, you're like, okay, turning the other cheek, does that mean you just got to turn the cheek and let them hit you again? Or, you don't understand the depth of what that actually means. The depth of what that means is exactly what that church did. They had a person come in and shoot and kill and completely turn their church upside down. But instead of getting vengeance and getting back at this kid or his family or whatever, they had empathy. They looked beyond his top action, the action that they saw that was at the top layer, and they dug down deep to look at him the way that God would look at him. Yeah. And they felt sorry for him, because a kid doesn't just walk into a church and shoot them up because he's all fine and dandy. There is something much, much deeper going on there.
That's right.
So he doesn't need somebody to come in and slap a jail sentence on him. He needs somebody to come in and say, it sucks what you did, but there's something here, and I want to help you with that. Let's dig deeper, and love them through this crap that they're doing. And sometimes people show it in some pretty crazy ways. But when you mature as a Christian, you view people with that empathy that God has. Yes, does it still hurt your humanness? Of course, your heart's still going to break when somebody treats you poorly. It's going to hurt, of course. But you look past that pain to see their pain and why they're able to do that to somebody, such as you. And you see that with the godly eyes, and you're able to try and reach out to them, or, see them like God would and pray for them. And that's where you can change people and justice still be there.
Wow. Very, very well put. And as Dan and I have grown, Shannon, we have learned, and we both remind each other that the wrath of Dan and the wrath of Glenn worketh not the righteousness of God.
100%. And forgiveness. Hey, if you want to stop your spiritual life, hold unforgiveness.
Oh, that
I can give testimony of that.
Yeah.
Usually it's of somebody going, and I did something so great. Look at what the Lord did for me. I've done, when I held aught, I was almost like, you know what? I'm ready to become a deist. I just don't sense God anymore. It's all God. But it's like he said that. You got to forgive, because he forgave us.
Yeah.
So God is good.
Right.
God is good. This has been a blessing. Thank you guys so much.
Hey, how can our listeners
thank you.
how can our listeners support you guys? Where can they get your stuff? Where can they find you on the web? Give us the download on that, please.
Well, you can, of course, Facebook is probably the best place. We always post lyric videos with all of our songs as soon as they're released. You can find all of our music on iTunes, Google Play Music, YouTube. I mean, you can find it on any musical platform online. So you pretty much you Google us and we'll pop up everywhere. So
Awesome. Now, my next question is, how do we order a blackberry pie?
I want muffins.
Because I'm getting hangry.
Yeah, when
over here.
I'm cheating on my diet, I'm going to be like, I need some muffins.
Well, ordering blackberry pies is really hard since by the time they reach you guys, they'd be molded. But I guess the best way to do it is because I love South Carolina so much. You can, give me a plane ticket and then I'll just throw in the blackberry pie for free.
There we go.
You give me beaches, I'll give you blackberry pie.
That's good. That's good.
Send us blackberry pies. So, what we're going to do is, you guys are the prophetic artists of the month for the month of September.
Yes, they are.
So we are going to post all of your links and some information about you guys on our website at lithoscry.com. That's LITHOSCRY.com. Again, we've got Shannon and Jay with us from World Breaker. Awesome band, awesome people, super smart. I love these guys.
I do too. And when you listen to that about the documentary about Angola, please I want to hear your reaction from when you watch those videos. I really do. You'll find it on YouTube. It's all over the place. And when I saw it, I was like, I'd never heard of it in my life. It blew my mind. It'll affect you. So there we go. From pop music to muffins to heavy metal.
Yep. To justice. Guys.
I have to mention this. Since we're going to be the Spotlight Artist for the month of September. The month of September is my birthday month.
Oh.
So you'll have to listen as my birthday present.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. That is awesome. That is awesome, man. God's really worked this. Betty Crocker, we hit that. A little word of knowledge there. A little word of knowledge with this here. Dude, I think we are rolling in the spiritual stream today.
Yeah, no, it's good. Jay, Shannon, it's been a pleasure. Bless you guys.
It has been. Thank you guys. And
thank you guys so much for having us.
You guys are awesome.
thank you. And to our listeners, rock on and peace out. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was such a blessing.
Thank you guys so much.
And
that was fun.
I'm going to start utilizing au fond.
Enfant, yes.
in
I
my
would like.
vocabulary.
I'd like a blackberry enfant, please.
The essence of blackberry. Por favor.
Blackberry. That's like blackberry pie a la mode, isn't it? Enfant.
It's my new muffin recipe.
You
Lane.
sound all poetic.
What you said? We're pathetic.
We hear that a lot.
We hear that a lot.
Man.
Oh, poetic. Oh, okay.
Oh.
I see an outtakes going on here.
Bless you guys. Take care.
Bless you. Have fun, guys.
Yeah, God bless.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.